I'm here with Val, and we are going to talk today about abandonment. Now, with trauma, abandonment can kind of be a big deal. Abandonment can come from emotional abandonment, it can come from physical abandonment, it can even come from spiritual abandonment. So, let's say you were abused as a child and your parents were still in the home, you still had people around you, but yet you still have abandonment issues and you can't figure out why. Why would you say someone in that environment would have abandonment issues?
I know for myself that I felt totally on my own in my home emotionally, and it made me feel abandoned. I didn't identify it then. I just knew how alone I was because no one was available to understand me, believe me, help me, comfort me. I was on my own with that, and that has carried through to now.
Absolutely. And I can remember sitting at my kitchen table. It's like I can picture it as clear as day, sitting there after disclosing some of the things that were happening in my home and being told it's not true, it didn't happen, you're crazy, you imagined it or you dreamed it. And I remember sitting there and saying to myself at 8 years old, I am completely and utterly alone. I don't have anybody I can talk to or depend on in my household, and I have to deal and cope with this on my own. And that was a switch for me, because as a kid I became defensive, I became self-sufficient, and I realized that any way I coped, and I started coping in ways that brought attention to me because no one in my family was listening. And I did a video on black sheep, and that's kind of the black sheep thing. Hey, something's happening. But you can have severe abandonment issues when you are emotionally abandoned within your family, even if it's intact. What other things made you feel abandoned as a kid?
As a kid, I don't have a clear memory of exactly, other than the fact that my mom did leave a few times.
Mm-hmm.
They had a very toxic marriage, and she left a few times. But I don't know. I feel like the emotional abandonment it did even more harm in a way. I mean, they both did harm, but it can make me feel now like, even in friendships and different things, I can feel like someone will be abandoning me, like the shoe dropping. Like I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm going to be abandoned.
And what do you do when you have that fear? What do you do in the relationship? What did you do when you were unhealthy? Let's put that.
I would panic, and my coping mechanism is people pleasing and all of that. So I would have just done deep dive into being the best friend I could possibly be, and giving no reason to be abandoned, which is exhausting.
Exactly.
Because nobody can do that. Really.
Right.
That's what I did. And
a lot of times, abandonment issues that come from deep-seated childhood stuff can carry over, and a lot of your relationships, you may do things you're wondering, why am I doing this? Why am I going crazy trying to ensure that I don't get dropped as a friend, or dropped as a employee, or dropped as a date? Because we have this deep-seated fear, and it doesn't even have to make sense to you all the time. A lot of times people can't even trace it back to a certain thing. But it's really important that when you're looking at your relationships, especially romantic relationships, you are not trauma bonded. One, because if you're trauma bonded, that's going to bring up the abandonment issues. and you are going to have more fear and more cleanness about the relationship. It's almost like an addiction. A trauma bond can almost feel like an addiction when you're trying to break it. So those will bring up abandonment issues. A lot of these issues can coexist together. Have you found that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say I have not had chemical addictions, but I have had trauma bond, and from everyone who's had chemical addictions and coping mechanisms, the description, I've felt those things. And I felt the withdrawal, and I felt the falling off the wagon and trying to get back on the wagon. I felt those things, so I don't know how closely relate, but I would call it addictive.
Right. And abandonment is such a primal, here's the key, guys. It's such a primal fear, because think about it. If an animal is abandoned in the wild, in a herd, in a group of people, in a group of animals, whatever, a herd, a flock, whatever, if they are abandoned, their survival is at risk. And the same happens with us. It feels like our survival is at risk if we lose this relationship, or we lose this group of people, or we lose whatever it is we're fearing. It can feel like a primal fear that we're going to die if this happens. Have you ever felt that?
It feels like I'm going to die.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's a primal fear in us. And so how do we deal with the abandonment issue? Number one, how do we deal with the abandonment issue? First,
Call Linda. Sorry.
No, well, you can call me, but you don't have to. But the first thing you have to do is you have to figure out the root. We have to figure out the root, guys. There is no way around this. I know there's a lot of things out there on the internet saying, hey, you don't have to go to the root of your problem. You can just do A, B, or C, and you can get over your trauma. Well, yeah, maybe those will help you regulate yourself, and maybe they will help, you feel on a more even emotional keel. But to really deal with the abandonment issue, you have to go back to where it started, where it first occurred. And when you can identify that, like I did at the kitchen table, like that was a key for me. That was the root of my healing for the abandonment issue. Do you know where yours was traced back to? Can you?
Not clearly like you.
And why? Why is that?
I have repressed memories.
Okay. And if you have repressed memories, you're not going to be able to get back to a specific issue. But you still can generalize that, okay, I can't identify anything else that makes sense to me, so I'm going to understand that there's probably something in my repressed memories, but I can still start dealing with the abandonment in a couple of ways. First, you get to know yourself, you start loving yourself, you start doing inner child work. And I have videos on everything we've talked about, so just look through my YouTube channel. But we start by doing inner child work and healing work in yourself. And you start getting to know what those issues are. You start getting to know what those fears are. You start understanding yourself a little better. And then once you do that, you start taking risks in relationships. You start being real where the person could reject you. You've done that. We've done this. And what has happened in those relationships that you've done that, where you took the risk and you were just yourself, whether they rejected you or...
Well, the toxic relationships ended.
There you go.
So, and then the rebuild, I'm in the rebuild stage. And there was some carry through. Very few.
Right.
Very few. But but the awareness, my eyes are, I'm woke. I'm fully woke to it. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm fully woke to it. So I start to see a warning sign. But I've done a pretty good job lately with that. I'm just realizing right now as I'm saying it.
Yeah, and the relationship you have, how much more fulfilling are they now that you're able to be real?
Well, there's freedom. Because the codependency and the fear of abandonment makes you cling on.
It's like a trap.
It's like a trap. But it's like being in prison for
yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the second thing is you start being real in your relationships and you start taking those risks. And you have a backup. In other words, when you're doing that in your relationships, you have somebody you're talking to, whether it's a therapist, a friend, a clergyman, or person, or whatever. But somebody that, okay, I'm taking this risk in a relationship. If I get rejected or if I get abandoned, I have somebody I can fall back on and say, hey, this did happen. You know, I gave it a shot. It still happened. And you can process and debrief with them. And that's really, really important. And then once you do that, you're going to start, like you said, feel the freedom. And that issue may still haunt you every once in a while, but it's not going to be like, I'm going to die if this person leaves me. I'm going to die if I'm real and they reject me. That will start dissipating and you'll start feeling more comfortable with yourself and other people. And that's how you get over the fear of abandonment. Anything I missed?
No, I think, you know, when you described it like that, it is, I have such a picture of like the way that I used to be I would be so terrified of being abandoned. I'm not saying I'm never terrified of being abandoned. I can still hear the voice in my head sometimes, but I know that I acknowledge that. I think I have the tendency to report in when I'm struggling.
And
because,
that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
The debriefing thing is like very helpful.
Great. And look for the other videos because there's videos on every single topic we've talked about. And so if you're having trouble with this issue or anything else, please contact me, Linda Beatty, at Linda Beatty's Life Coaching and Counseling, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys. God bless.